Here we go, you guys. Very, very grateful to be able to share this time with you today. We are about to start a brand new live read. So, within this, just saying welcome to everyone, just getting all of the fun technical things going here as we get the YouTube live going. I have such a love for getting to share these interactions with you guys and these experiences as far as being able to dive into some of these topics. Some of these are a little bit more challenging, some of these are just helpful to feel as though we have an awareness that these things are going on, and also to allow us to get some answers many times for some of the things that we might be experiencing in our own lives. So, I do hope that that is exactly what this next book is for us as we dive through this. So I'm just pulling up the live chat here saying welcome to you guys. Thank you guys, Valerie, Sophia, so happy, Sarah. Welcome, welcome, and just welcome to everyone as you are logging in. Welcome, Darlene. So much love to you. This is amazing. I've been wanting to do this particular live read for a little while. This book, Love Bite. Alien Interference in Human Love Relationships by Eva Lorgan. And this is a book. It's another one that I might call an oldie but a goodie kind of thing, because it seems like all the last live reads we've done have been published around the year 1999. This one's no different. This one was also published, and the date in the book is 1999. So we can see there's a lot of massive information that was coming out close to, basically 25 years ago, that we were really maybe getting some explanations for things that we were experiencing. But as a collective, as a whole, we didn't have quite the platforms or the way to really feel, I think, that it was such a mainstream topic like we can today. So even though there were support groups and there were ways for people to meet with each other and learn about these things, we are in a very special time, you guys. So even if we have experienced any of these things, even if these are things that we might still be aware of as popping up within our reality as we go through this book, please know we are in a very, very special time where we can really support each other. There's such a larger network for resources, um, information, and just the accessibility of being able to just in real time talk with each other about these things. Hey, Jason, welcome. So happy to have you here. And so, within this, let's go ahead and dive into this next live read. I do, as always, like to say, please know we're going to go through this. I do share commentary as we go along the way. Utilize whatever resonates for you, whatever feels as though it helps you within your life path, maybe ahas for yourself or for loved ones. But please know if something doesn't resonate, just toss it right out. This is for us to dive in, to have a deeper contemplation on topics with each other. And within that, this book is going to be a little bit more of a challenging or heavy topic as we're talking about alien interference, especially alien interference in our love relationships and what that might look like. So I do invite you, if you have the tools to do your 12th dimensional shield, your 48 dimensional shield, in whatever ways things come up, maybe take notes on it so that if you're also working with things that we're working together with as a flame holders group, such as the womb chakra, you can take these things to your next womb chakra clearing meditation or mantra in order to process some of these things. I do want to, as we get going, just throw that in there, make an invitation to all of you. If you are looking for a place to feel safe, to have a community, to talk about these kinds of things, please dive onto my website, withbecca.com. There's free community pages. So there's pages where you can jump right on and be able to join a Telegram or a community page where you can have a safe space to talk about these things. If you want to dive into this in a much deeper way and really start to have the tools and the support using the tools going through these things, the Flame Holders group is amazing. It is such a passion. It is where we spend a lot of our time aside from these live reads. So just putting that out there as an absolute invitation. Let me just get my phone absolutely turned off and silenced, and off we go. So let's go ahead and dive right into this book, you guys. So within this, again, we are going to be going through the book, The Love Bite. Alien interference in human love relationships. This is a highly referenced book in a lot of different modalities, techniques. The work that Eve Lorgen did was tremendous. It was a real gift for us because she did a lot of research back in the early days before anyone really kind of understood or knew any of these things. And she began to compile a lot of research, a lot of data, a lot of collaborative thoughts that really started to support something quite detrimental that was happening to a big part of the population on Earth that a lot of people wanted to just toss out as if it wasn't legitimate, or maybe she was just making stuff up, or that she was just, a lot of the colleagues at that time were even proposing that, oh, she was just trying to make alien interference the reason for why all relationships don't work. And that is not the case at all. I think for those of us that have experienced anything like this, you're going to go like, oh yeah, I'm thanking you so much, Eve Lorgen, for continuing on, for having the tenacity to see this through, for not letting the voices of others really stop you, as it can for many individuals, because she was really working within a field of like a clinic, working with groups and really supporting people. So as we get into this, we're going to just kind of just recognize this, put a lot of love out there. I do recommend, if you want to get this book, easy, just go right on Amazon. I'll get the link down in the description below, but you can just go right on Amazon. You can get, I believe, paperback book as well as the Kindle version of this if you like. And the Kindle version is what we're going to be reading today. So within this, I'm just going to kind of skim through. We're going to start with chapter 1. And is the love bite real? I'm gonna actually summarize this so we can get right into all the good stuff, because this first chapter is really her talking about how difficult it was, a little bit of what I was summarizing a little bit easier. She was really proposing that a lot of aliens may have intentionally been manipulating human romantic and sexual relationships and creating obsessive dysfunction within these relationships that were leading to a lot of emotional suffering. She was presenting this to other colleagues and things. And within that, they were many times discounting because it sounded a little obtuse or obscure, or something that just seemed like it was just, again, not comfortable for the mainstream to really talk about. She was talking about how these psychological effects, including estrangement from loved ones, substance abuse, depression, even suicidal thoughts, would come with the act of these alien interferences. So the alien interferences could start to cause estrangement within relationships. It could perpetuate maybe more substance abuse, depression, or even suicidal thoughts amongst others that were dealing with these things, amongst the abductees that were dealing with a lot of these things. She was getting, again, a lot of critique from the others around as far as what she was presenting through. And within that, I want to just kind of cut down to this very last little bit of this first chapter. And it's showing here, oh, it didn't save my last thing that I put in here. I had a star up here. So we're going to start right here. Basically, in this, I run the risk of sounding repetitive. So as we're coming towards the end of chapter 1 within here, we're going to see that she just had the tenacity to keep going with all of this. So she says, I run the risk of sounding repetitive, but my research shows that the tagging experience often takes the form of an actual injection or inserted tracer or implant, which I think of as a ritualistic bite, much like the insect or snake bite with adjuvant behavioral conditioning, which leads to changes to the victim's normal relationships. This bite may also cause radical changes in metabolism, life force energy, mental status, and brain waves. Thus, the term love bite. But the real love bite usually comes later after several abductions. I notice time and time again that an abductee, once bitten, moves on to a life of virtual manipulation unless they receive help. This help can only be achieved by breaking the denial chain through knowledge, prayer, and meditation on positive behaviors. Almost every abductee caught up in a love bite scenario loses interest in their spouse and often grows estranged from their families, even their children, during the duration of the love bite in order to obey an implanted obsession for an alien chosen target partner. So she's showing here figure 1, relocation by an abductee involving manipulations by reptilian beings peering through an interdimensional portal which opens in his bedroom. These are very real, you guys. So I wanted to actually share this image within here. It soon became apparent that the aliens had forced the abductees into illogical and emotional corral, like cattle in a stockyard. This alien mate selection process almost always works itself out under alien controlled trance states and occurs most vividly in dreams. So much for the prime directive of the non-interference clause I see so well adhered to on Star Trek. Some of the frightful material Turner exposed in her lectures and books left many people trembling, as would be expected. She was attacked and vehemently criticized for her passionate view of the alien human abduction agenda, especially by those in the camp of positive extraterrestrial theory. So within this, saying, unfortunately, the fiery spirited Turner met an untimely death January 9, 1996, months after discovering she had breast cancer. A series of anomalous events preceded her cancer discovery. So she's talking about someone she had been working with early in the chapter. Again, if you want to get this book and read, again, the first chapter is really just setting everything up. All the meat of everything we're going to be talking about is in the next chapters. I believe the UFO community needs to address some very deep psychological issues. Thousands, possibly even millions of people are suffering greatly at the hands of non-human intelligence over which we have no control. The greatest pain comes from broken hearts, ruined relationships, and shattered families created by aliens. It's as if the aliens feed on human emotional energy. So within this, I wanted to read this portion of the first chapter. Again, the first chapter is just setting up kind of her journey into it, her research within it, the invalidation that was coming through her and other researchers that were talking in on these parts. And now we're going to get into all the meat of the material here. But I wanted to read this because this was really, really key. For those of you that may, as you go along with, as we're reading this, if you feel these kinds of things, radical changes in metabolism, life force energy, this means it's a lot of times a depletion in life force energy, like tired, have no energy to do anything. Mental status and brain waves change, thus the term love bite, because again, it feels many times as though some poison or toxin or infection has gotten into the body and has now changed the literal way in which one thinks or feels. So within that, let's dive into it and you'll get the rest of the story. I am excited again to share this as we dive into all of these topics. Please, again, take notes if anything is triggering for you. Clear it. Know that we are sharing this as a way for you to have the support or to be able to support your loved ones who may have shared similar things. Chapter 2, The Quest. When I began this book, I ruffled a few feathers. The polite argument against my research usually took a skeptical tone, roughly as follows. Everyone has relationship problems or love affairs gone sour. Now you're blaming everything on aliens? My rebuttal was simple. I am not blaming everything on aliens. I am not generalizing to the crazy world of tabloid soap operas and romance novels. I'm not ascribing the love bite to everyone who has been cheated on or to every man or woman who has found their spouse in bed with another lover. No, I am sticking strictly to my data. I am only talking about genuine abductees, a small but growing sample of brave souls who emerge from the shadows to tell their stories. For interpretation, all I can do is point to trends for future research. But after 10 years of constant observation, I am certain the love bite is real. I now invite you to enter the world I have been living in for the past decade. I invite you to meet some of the brave people who have come forward in attempts to cleanse themselves of painful enigma they hardly knew exists. All they know for certain is the pain they feel every day. I ask you only to keep an open mind as you read through the material. I suggest you look at the lives of the flesh and blood people from the perspective of a film or stage director. Imagine watching a children's puppet show. Raggedy Ann meets Raggedy Ann. Raggedy Andy meets Raggedy Ann. They flip and flop to the tune of an enigmatic love affair. Raggedy Andy courts his beloved, wooing her to that anticipated kiss. Raggedy Ann is swooned into a spell of romantic love. The current closes. In the next scene, Raggedy Ann is yearning for her newfound love, but instead of running to embrace her, he walks off stage, leaving Ann grieving with unrequited love. In the Alien Theater, Raggedy Ann and Andy step out of the dollhouse into the real world. They become human. They have names and jobs and children, but they remain puppets to the unseen puppet masters or the aliens. Perhaps a puppet show is a harsh metaphor for the lives of some alien abductees caught up in the dramas of the alien matchmakers, but I can think of nothing better. Are these alien orchestrated love affairs matches made in heaven, or is there something more sinister going on behind the veil of extraterrestrial contact? In the ensuing chapters, I will demonstrate what I believe to be alien instigated human bonding dramas, relationship manipulations, love obsessions, and even spiritual warfare tactics perpetuated on the human abductee population. I repeat, I am not the only abduction researcher in the UFO field to have stumbled across this rueful alien trend. And I will say again, I've mentioned before, Karenga Malinga is I'll put the link in the description below. He's done a lot of research on this as well. So you can imagine she's saying, I've done 10 years of research. This is, now going back to 35 years ago, bringing a lot of these cases forward. So as we get to look at this. In Missing Time, Bud Hopkins emphasizes the questionable nature of the intruders. More recently, in Witness, Hopkins brought the alien orchestrated bonding phenomena to light by focusing on the famous Brooklyn Bridge case, also known as the Corteil case. In this case, a female abductee from Manhattan named Linda Corteil recalled being bonded to an FBI agent known only as Richard. This agent was, conveniently, one of the three highly reliable witnesses to her abduction in 1989. How frequent is the love bite? According to Hopkins, 14 out of 650 abduction cases emphasized alien interferences in romantic and emotional bonding, which is roughly 2% of the cases. He admits this is a small number, perhaps otherwise insignificant, but as the total number of cases increase and I look more closely, I see a pattern occurring in the statistical matrix. It now appears that the bonding interference elements in abductee relationships, i.e., the love bite, represents a separate experimental modality, and that the aliens seem to have singled out a subset of abductees, a small but susceptible group who seem to fit a profile. So, although difficult to prove such a small sample and still working within the confines of anecdotal data, I contend that at least 1/3 of all abduction cases may be direct result of purposeful alien manipulation. This is more than double the number suggested by Hopkins. The number of cases where this love-bitten bonding experience occurs may be greater, as it only recently came into the full light of day. A close look at my data gives us one further parameter to help us differentiate love bite cases from everyday marital hassles and the agonies of the so-called normals who have not been abducted by aliens. With the possible exception of Heaven's Gate cult scant, few love bite cases take the form of a whole family. Abductions. In other words, the love bite usually occurs in cases where a single individual is abducted several times, often with a targeted partner, or in some cases with whole groups of abductees being lined up for bonding in mass, as was reported in the Ted Rice case in Carla Turner's book, Masquerade of Angels. In doing research of this kind, I was forced to weed through a vague wannabe case weed through the vague wannabe cases to locate the sincere abductees who had true love bite stories. These are genuine abductees and they are suffering in silence. For them, the toxins from the love bite, be they psychological or chemical, can only be extinguished by long-term support therapy, hypnosis, and perhaps prayer. I want to just highlight that. So again, she's still building her case within chapter 2, but to recognize that again, it's generally singular abduction cases. It's not usually an entire cult or an entire family that is being abducted, but it can be groups of abductees, and we'll see this. Usually the groups of abductees will not all be even from the same town. It might be the same group of abductees that are kind of taken from all over, but they keep being brought together. We'll see this. I've actually had this confirmed in multiple times of other individuals who have had abduction experiences, who many times will kind of they become lucid wherever the transport is or wherever they are, and they actually will start to recognize the familiar faces around them, and recognize that they know each other from maybe other places. So I want to say that, but I also want to highlight this, that again, we want to recognize that sometimes grabbing onto this energy, eh, noticing it can seem very, very frustrating. Like we're dealing with something that she's saying here, it can only be extinguished by long-term support, therapy, hypnosis, and perhaps prayer. That's where I think the frustration comes in a huge way, because we can recognize it, we can feel it, we can actually get to the place that we know what it is, but there is a dedication to going through this, to actually not giving up, not letting go, and seeing this through, because it's not something that just clears out of the system overnight. These technologies that they've used and these implants that they've used, they are legitimate. I really want to reiterate that, and they definitely take a bit of tenacity and dedication to get them cleared out. So just seeing it through. I have thus had to be steadfast and rigorous in my approach to the material. From the cases I have seen in detail, it seems the love bite works best for the aliens with a solo victim who remains unaware of its occurrence and implications. A person who can be abducted several times and then placed back into the normal population for observation. In the last chapter, the mask of sanity disguised as love bite will be explored more fully, but for now, let us assume that we are at least onto something real here and that it needs to be explored fully by a great many more researchers. As a counselor and researcher dealing with abductees on a continual basis, I can safely say that the phenomena is both real and decidedly unique to the psychiatric literature. Cases involving UFOs and abductions of this nature should be defined into a separate category. I stumbled upon the love bite construct inadvertently in my own work when several persons in my abductee support group described obsessive relationships, bondings that seemed to have been forced on them by their alien handlers. These relationships differed markedly from the non alien love obsession cases we hear about, both in intensity and destructiveness. I must insert here the caveat that all of the cases included in this book are based on data from the certified abductees, not psychotics. Like rape or robbery victims, abductees are usually very reticent and shy, and we shall see. And it takes a lot of guts to come out of the shadows to declare in public, even to a small group, what has happened. The essential stumbling block to the abductee and their families is the denial, which is always the linchpin for the person's disharmony, um, dysrhythmia, and angst. Once the denial is dissolved, the real catharsis and healing can begin. But with love obsessed abductees, the problem is further complicated by the lack of knowledge and public support, let alone the full conscious awareness of how they are being manipulated. Quite frankly, it is nearly a miracle, considering the extreme measures taken by the aliens to ensure secrecy, that we have discovered the alien manipulation bonding process at all. Non-abduction related psychological issues such as eating disorders, substance abuse, and mood disorders are commonplace and institutionalized in the context of healing therapies. But abductee support groups and therapeutic modalities in this field are a relatively new trend. If coming to a support group for the first time, it is like crossing a new threshold, entering a fresh room wherein one's self-esteem, sometimes already in tatters, may be torn apart even more by potential rejection. My goal as a researcher and counselor was to assure each individual that they were safe with me and the other group members. I therefore believe that my data has a kind of empathic validity to it, even if it is not purely empirical. I am sure I explored subconscious and waking areas that the abductee could never express through a survey questionnaire with a traditional clinical approach. Once they saw that I and the other members of the group held forth a sympathetic ear, they opened up. Safety is a very important issue, and it is hard to come by. I would also like to point out that the majority of abductees who talk openly about their relationship issues are primarily women. Although I have also received quite a few letters from male abductees who have come forward with classic love by alien manipulation love relationships. Many men have been abducted or are spouses of abductees, and they too require a great deal of empathy. The fact that I am a woman worked in my favor most of the time. The female abductees needed a girlfriend to talk to, and the men needed a feminine, non competitive listener, like a sister. The men did not seem to be seeking macho type buddies to share this experience with, and I hope their viewpoint is equally represented in the presentation. Perfect. I think that helps set us up really well with where Eve is coming from, just the tremendous work and dedication she put forth to bring this information through as cleanly as possible for all of us. So now as we get into this third chapter, the third chapter is signs and symptoms. So this is really going to start to dive us into a lot of the parameters I think she was looking for as she's determining whether something was a legitimate love bite or whether or not it was something else. Signs and symptoms. The following points represent characteristics and symptoms of the love bite and of alien interference in the bonding process. The things I looked for and the patterns I saw emerging are part of these indications, but there are many more. I included them to allow the reader to see a formative process at work. The aliens, or rather those aliens who are conducting research into human bonding scenarios, seem to have worked out a strategy for maximum efficiency, a strategy aimed at goals I can only guess at. Their orchestrated mate selection process usually starts in childhood or teen years for maximum emotional and sexual cohesion. The bonding also can take place in adulthood, where they meet the targeted partner only months after being bonded. In almost all of the love bite cases, the abductee had experienced abductions since childhood. Usually, an abductee meets another abductee during one or more alien encounters or in very vivid dreams. The pair may interact on a verbal or physical level, sometimes involving sexual foreplay and even intercourse. This can occur several times over many years until a strong connection is made. These selective interactions may or may not be recalled by either partner. Often, only one partner will remember the experience, while the other has no memory or only a vague recollection. When both partners meet in real life, there is an instant sense of recognition, and the couple may fall in love. There are variations to the pattern and sequence of events, but in most cases, one partner falls in love more than the other and is left feeling unrequited. The relationship between the two bonded individuals is such that both persons are magnetically attracted to one another, often in unlikely situations. The love relationship set up may include a number of bizarre synchronicities, vivid dreams, psychic phenomena, and bonding exercises during alien encounters. The bonding experiences are often intimate and sexual, such that one or the other develops an intense chemistry and love obsession with the targeted partner. They may even, on occasion, receive telepathic or post hypnotic suggestions to become sexually involved with the other person. Oftentimes, either abductee is married to or has an existing relationship with the other mate. It doesn't make a difference. The emotional, passionate, and sometimes telepathic connection between the couple is unlike normal love relationships. Whatever normal is, anyways. It is often realized and romanticized as the most phenomenal love imaginable, to the point of total spiritual immersion or indwelling of the lover and their beloved, a match made in heaven. Then the inevitable happens. It is absolutely devastating. The targeted love partner becomes switched off, and the love struck other half becomes painfully unrequited. The chosen partner usually has an initial love attraction or friendship with the other, yet loses the interest, often right after the alien abduction or dreamlike encounters. Just really quickly, just to summarize that, because this is a key point. Two people will come together and it's like this love bonding automatically, like this just instant attraction happens with both of them. But then through the alien manipulation, they'll make it where they switch one of them off so that one of them is overly obsessed with this new connection and relationship, but then the other has an energy and then they go, nope, and then they start to pull away. This is key. Just remember that, because this is actually how they're manipulating emotions. They're creating a really heightened polarity in this attraction dynamic so that they can play with the emotions that is being triggered by these people. Some abductees report spontaneous remote viewing images of the intended partner in such a way as to elicit emotions such as jealousy, obsessed love, yearning, and grievous unrequited love pangs. The alien manipulated love obsession process is akin to a carrot being dangled just enough to get the obsessed lover into a constant cycle of love and unrequited love. This may extend from relationship to relationship and is emotionally exhausting. In Appendix A, I include a summary that defines the characteristic signs and symptoms of an alien orchestrated love relationship setup. Note that some of these symptoms may arise in a normal, non-manipulated romantic relationship or love obsession. The key points in being able to identify if such a relationship between two persons is alien orchestrated. This is the aspect of multiple abduction histories for one or the other partner and taking into consideration the whole clinical picture as defined below. Memory loss and mnemonic fragments. Most verifiable love bite experiencers recall vivid dreams or virtual reality scenarios, albeit in fragments. Some describe their experience as a stage managed dream where both partners are present, usually in a bedroom setting or sexual encounter, or where both partners are being given subtle telepathic messages to initiate contact, either on a verbal level or more physical, sexual level. Oftentimes, either partner appears to be in a trance or drugged state. Other stage managed abduction dreams may have the partners in various situations as if they are being tested for their emotional and sexual compatibility, or coerced into thinking that this person would make an ideal romantic mate. Here, it is possible that the aliens are trying to manipulate the situation to gain control of specific children of the orchestrated union. For example, a specific DNA type selection strategy. But there are other reasons for the matchmaking, as we shall see in the following case histories. Other options are supernatural events. The vast majority of love bite victims report experiencing a great many seemingly incoincident events. Fulfilled destiny predictions, synchronous observations, psychic flashes concerning the targeted partner, and other paranormal or even mystical events. Meeting the person appears to be set up in a supernatural way, such that the couple may believe their eventual union to be divinely arranged. A first meeting of the pre-bonded partner may set off a series of deja vu memories, flashback memories, or previous abductions, or dream-related bondings. Some have even described it as a body memory of having made love to that person before. One or both partners have a strong sense of having known the person before, as if they knew them all their lives or have a strong soul connection. This is not a past life regression experience, but rather something directly related to the present life. That one's key, you guys. And I'm just curious, as you're listening, maybe in the chat, just what are some of the things coming up for you as you're hearing some of this? Because I think this supernatural events paragraph here is massive, where it's even orchestrated to feel as though it's divine or there's something connected to it as like a past life soul connection or bonding. Really quite manipulative in a lot of ways. So, increased psychic phenomenon. Most abductees report a heightened sense of paranormal phenomena and visions during the love bite drama. This may include empathic and even telepathic communication between the love bite pair. Spontaneous remote viewing images and mutually shared dreams are commonplace. Other oddities may include the physical sensation of the partner's touch or energy field during fantasy, even when they are miles apart. This phenomena is also known as telesthesia. This includes common reports of a strong emotional, mental, and psychic connection between the partners, a rapture so strong, so immersing that the desire to meet with the beloved is overwhelming. The connection can be so strong that partners have described it as a soul immersion in their beloved, or literally having their souls joined together. This is reminiscent of the evolution of the love of the divine as described by medieval Christian mystics like Saint Teresa of Avila and Ramon Lull, or by the I and thou process described by Martin Buber. A similar ecstasy or satori state can occur with yogis and especially in Zen Buddhism. In many cases, one or both of the subjects in the dyad reports several alien encounters. In a few cases, the targeted partner did not realize him or herself to be an abductee. In many cases, one of the partners was abducted and matched to an outsider, and the original spouse was simply forgotten. After about 2 years of group work, it dawned on me that the love bite dramas arose from each participant simultaneously. I was careful not to lead, coach, or make suggestions as I did the interviews, and was always careful to avoid post-hypnotic suggestions. So that's very interesting. So as she did the research, when alien love bite individuals came together, she was finding that they were having similar things happening in their life prior to that experience before they actually met with each other, and that rebonding happened through through the alien directed reencounter. The next symptom or symbol here is multiple abductions. Most of the participants in my counseling sessions admit to being abducted several times. The realization that aliens have been interfering in our sex lives, probably for many centuries, was not just passed around as a new syndrome cloister by a bunch of overworked hysterics. Each of the participants saw the love bite idea in their own way before they came to the group sessions, often referring to their plight as being caught up in spiritual warfare. I want to stress that in all but one of the cases, the victims claim to have undergone multiple abductions. Clearly, the love bite is not a one time thing. Other researchers have discovered cluster cases of the love bite in areas going through intense UFO waves where the victims were not sure they had multiple abductions, yet fit the pattern because of a wave of UFO abduction activity in their locale. In interpreting the following files, I focused on the bonding experience itself and the abduction related interaction surrounding these alien directed relationships, whether it became a dramatic love obsession, a marital breakup, or another kind of manipulation. I also want to make it clear that these cases are not plucked from thin air and are not derived from persons experiencing simple marital difficulties, nor are they derived from subjects who were perhaps using alien abductions as an excuse for their perceived ills. I have done everything in my power to screen out anyone who distorts reality, although I do often have to tolerate them in the support groups. I feel strongly that there is something sinister about the alien presence in these people's lives. The ramifications of these alien directed bonding dramas are far more profound than one would suspect at first glance. Due to the limitations of the literary format, I have had to pull out a mere handful from the many cases in my files. I screened out the most redundant cases because, frankly, some of them, although tragic in the extreme, just don't translate into print. Many abductees are so distracted by being thrown from crisis to crisis that they don't often see the connections and continue to live in the denial. From my perspective, the love bite affects every person differently, but there is one common denominator. Everyone in my study reported emotional exhaustion, as if the life force had just been drained out of them. It soon became apparent that the love bite can turn once proud individuals into forlorn and disillusioned souls. This should give us a hint about what the aliens may really want. This information may come as an unwelcome shock to those who prefer the benevolent extraterrestrial theory. I am sorry to strike a negative tone here. My uncle was at Woodstock too, but frankly, I think many UFO enthusiasts are naive dreamers. My data shows the aliens to be, if not fully self-serving, then at least conducting themselves with depraved indifference. My data may push some hot buttons in the UFO, New Age, and academic communities, but I must be true to my findings. This study is not meant as an attack on any particular religious, political, or social groups, although some fringe cults may be patently dangerous. That said, I feel I must focus on anomalous experiences as they were and are lived by real people. Naturally, many names and other minor details were changed to preserve the promised and anonymous of the abductees and their families. So, this is really special, and I just again want to just give so much love to Eve for bringing this information forward, because we can tie this to the information that was coming out at exactly the same time. So that she wouldn't have known about the Voyagers books or, say, the Ashiana Dean materials, as Ashiana Dean was, or Anna Hayes at that time was typing into the Voyagers of Voyagers 1, what was the agenda of the Zeta Reticuli. So Eve Lorgen is talking very broadly about alien abduction and aliens. All right, so with crossing this over with some of the Voyagers materials, we can also get a little bit of a clearer perspective of the Zeta Reticuli and a lot of these self-serving agendas they had for experimenting on humans, trying to figure out from humans, what are all of these emotions? How do they get souls so that they can actually start to create bodies? They really were looking for ways to hijack, and still, this is a huge thing that's playing out on the planet right now. So I want to just kind of cross over that thought form as we're going through this. Another key point that she was looking for, obsession. In most cases, one of the partners grows obsessed. This often includes the needs to meet the targeted beloveds just one more time, and having to hear the person's voice on the phone, sometimes calling the person daily or several times a day. Just hearing the targeted partner's voice may have a calming effect on the obsessed lover. Extreme anxiety may be felt if the obsessed person cannot hear that voice pattern. In several cases, stalking incidences were reported. The obsessed partner usually claims the love affair was based on limerence or puppy love, a deep feeling of commitment commonly expressed as love at first sight. In 1999, as this was written, telephones, we still had voice mail or voice machines, these kinds of things. I want to say this translates over into text messages, getting that hit. So not only is it hearing the person's voice on the phone, but a lot of times it's text message interactions, sometimes email interactions, any kind of data exchange or something that gives a hit or a rush. I'm just going to invite you to put that as a possibility in the back of the head, because that's a big one, that people look for, that rush of getting that text message back. Some abductees make sudden life changes. For example, changing jobs without warning or buying expensive cars and clothing. They may also make a radical change in lifestyle revolving around being closer to their object of affection. These changes often couple with the obsession to meet the targeted and usually rejecting person just one more time, even if it means playing hooky from work or family affairs. More often, the love-bitten partner goes out of his or her way to do things for the object of their obsession, often to the point of losing self-esteem due to the fear of rejection or what the smitten partner perceives as an impending rejection. The love bite often leads into depression and, extreme cases, suicidal ideation. Switching off, another key thing. In almost every case, I could track one or both of the partner unplugs from the emotional connection and becomes glib, seemingly unfeeling and sullen. I like to describe the phenomena as the psychic and emotional unplugging of the targeted partner. Unfortunately, the obsessed lover remains plugged in and continues to feel a strong bond. This happens in many non-abductee marriages too, but in the love-bitten cases, the switching off is very sudden. This unplugging can usually be traced back to specific abductions or even camping trips where one partner was taken during the night. In addition, the alien timed unplugging usually acts as the trigger for the flood of obsessive behavior, anxiety, low self esteem, and depression described above. Other dynamics may come into play, such as insurmountable obstacles put into place between the love bitten pair, such that consummation of the strong love cannot be carried out. In any case, the relationship appears to be designed for maximal emotional tension. Key point right in there. In any case, the relationship appears to be designed for maximum emotional tension. This is key, you guys, because they want that dynamic. They want that polarity, that tension to be playing out so that they can study it, research it, experiment with it. This is really key. Emotional turmoil. All of us have experienced some degree of emotional turmoil, but the love-bitten abductee experiences a degree of turmoil tantamount to insanity. The powerful emotions of love and grief evoked by the orchestrated drama may cause one person to be inspired with creative energy so that they write poetry, music, or any other art form of creative expression, while the other partner languishes in tedium. Eventually, the degree of emotional pain, the loneliness, and the lack of support prior to coming to a support group may throw the unrequited lover into suicidal ideation, mental and physical exhaustion, or illness. Naturally, I make this point as a call for more support groups and recognition of what the aliens are really doing to their chosen ones. Thank you, Eve, for saying that. And yes, 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 I agree. We need more sacred circles, more sacred places that we can come together, support groups. Again, she was running support groups as a means for holding a safe space. There's so many out there. I offer the soul-based life community or the flame holders group. This is just one of many. There are so many out there. It is really important for us to find this because the something she said in the paragraph before was the way really to really work with this is to be able to unplug. So the aliens may have some sort of way in which they are actually causing the unplug from one of the partners so that there isn't an interest anymore and it moves them away. But I'm going to just invite you to take that thought and to recognize that's actually a key healing tool is we have to learn to unplug. So if it happens to be the person that has the obsessive energy within them, the knowingness, the awareness of it, and then taking the physical action to start to say, I do not consent, and I am unplugging this energy now, is a great start because the unplugging is going to be key because part of what we're unplugging from is these alien handlers. Multiple bondings, another thing she is looking for, multiple bondings. So when you read through the case histories, you will probably wonder if the aliens are conditioning their victims, but whatever their goals, they cannot be achieved in a single abduction. All the abductees recall being taken on one or more occasions. Although this realization is foggy at first, eventually every one of the people I studied remembered fragments from different locales and scenarios. I also discovered that the piecing together of the abduction memory fragments increased when one partner began to see the facade. In other words, the love-bitten victim was more able to see the full picture only after they were no longer obsessed, or as alcoholics say, in the problem. Some abductees have reported the bonding experience to take place more than once. In other words, the same abductee may get bonded to another targeted individual. This may go on several times, throwing the love-bitten abductee from one relationship to the next. In these cases, the role playing can be reversed, whereby the once obsessed love-bitten victim is now the other unrequited end of the bonding drama. Or for some reason, the alien-directed bonding between two targeted lovers just does not work out, perhaps leaving the aliens perplexed. Some of the love setups are more powerful than others. Deeper insights into the variety of love relationship interference will be addressed in a later chapter. For example, in cases of reptilian aliens and their characteristic possessive stronghold on their female abductees. In these cases, one will notice a more profound effect in their love and sexual relationships. Alien-directed relationships may also involve homosexual relationships or even very strong, long-distance internet and bicoastal friendships of an asexual nature. These must be distinguished from mutually shared abductions or dreams with other abductees where no bonding takes place. I hope you will use some of these signs and symptoms to of these obsessive types of bondings to observe the case histories as they play out. So that's quite amazing, you guys. Uh, just to kind of look at all of those different ways in which the love bonding can take place. So all of that, and I might invite to go over that again, some of those different signs, signals, and ways that we can start to measure out, is this alien interference or is this just karmic types of relationships, learning how to be better in relationships, these kinds of things. But, I think many of you that join me here on the Soul Based Life channel, we've had a lot of these experiences. This is something that's very personal to me as I read this book by Eve Lorgen, is um, that I've had a lot of these situations in my own life. So that is what drew me to this book, this information, and a passion not only to learn it more, but to find ways to help and support others. So, I invite you as you go through this, just know if any of this resonates. Definitely, again, the community is arising. There is so much more openness to be able to share this without having to feel like we have to hide it anymore. And so we can really start to do the unplugging, the clearing, the healing, and to get our energy fields back from all of this. So much love. Let's dive in. Let's go ahead and now start to read some of the stories. We're starting with chapter 4. Chapter 4 is the Ted Rice story. What follows was reconstructed from Carla Turner's seminal book, Masquerade of Angels. I have decided to place Ted's story first because his experiences incorporate almost every aspect I saw in my research. In essence, Ted is the poster boy for the thousands of abductees who have not yet come forward. Ted's first alien encounter took place at 4 years old, while he spent the night with his grandmother, who for years afterward was afflicted by a deep sense of guilt because she felt she could not protect her grandson from his visions and nightmares. At age 8, Ted went through one of the most horrific alien abduction experiences on record. This almost unbelievable event remained deeply submerged in Ted's subconscious until he stepped out of the shadows to tell his story. The boy often walked through the open fields near his grandmother's home in Arkansas. One day he noticed a bright light off in the distance. The next thing he knew, the light levitated him up into a large metallic craft. Paralyzed, Ted found himself in a strange room with 3 small, chalky, angular-faced creatures with teardrop-shaped black eyes, as if they were covered with dark sunglasses. Confused, Ted asked, "Who are you? And where am I?" The beings made no response, but he soon began to understand telepathically. The Greys guided Ted to a sitting area where he could see out a window. He saw his grandparents' farm down below, getting smaller and smaller. He realized they were traveling up into the sky away from the earth at great speed. They approached a dark, gray, green, metallic looking orb out in space. The orb was huge and had spiky protuberances sticking out of it. Lights entered and exited the spikes. As he observed closely, he saw that the lights were UFOs coming and going from this large orb. The inside of the orb was spacious, and light beams stretched from point to point across the interior. Ted saw many different beings transversing in the light beams as if they were walkways. Ted's alien escorts led him to an examination room which contained a small or a round metallic table. It was raised several feet from the floor and featured a curved foot rest. He was directed to sit against the metal pallet with his feet on the rest. A female alien who was dressed in a white lab coat entered the room. She seemed theatrical to Ted. Her lips were painted with bright red lipstick, and she sported a burgundy red hair, which Ted thought was probably a wig. The controller ordered Ted to remove his clothes, which he refused to do. Ignoring his request, the dolled up scientist gave an order, and the attendant aliens forcibly undressed him. Naked, but strangely not cold, he was marshaled to a large set of screens where many lights pulsated. The aliens operated these screens as a type of X-ray or MRI machine, which gave the aliens a full color picture of Ted's internal organs, as if there were no skin or bones. Next, he was taken back to the metallic plate, which was tilted on a slight oblique angle. The Greys forced him to don a set of headphones. Noise came from the device, pleasant at first, but gradually increasing in pitch, tone, and decibels until the sounds passed the pain threshold. His reactions were noted. While relaxing and trying to recover from the ear-bursting cacophony of the experiment, and hoping the aliens would not hurt him, one of the Greys came towards Ted with a glass of green glowing liquid, which he was commanded to drink. Ted tried to resist it, but he was compelled to swallow the fluorescent liquid. Within seconds, he became nauseated. Pain flared up as if his insides were on fire. He vomited and remembered seeing globs of green liquid flowing down his face and chin. The drink must have contained some kind of drug because in a few seconds Ted found himself floating, motionless, above his body. Am I dead? He wondered. Then something cloudy and formless began to rise up from his body. The mass slowly coalesced into an image of himself as if he saw that it was attached by the bottom tendril to drops of the green glowing liquid on his face. It's my soul, Ted thought in amazement. Displaced from his pain, Ted sensed pure love and total forgiveness towards the aliens. As he hovered above, fully conscious, the woman went over to a nearby counter to retrieve a rectangular metal box, which she carried back to Ted's nude body. With a single motion, she turned to his body over, placing the box near Ted's shoulder. A spirit image of Ted, in miniature, was slowly transferred into the box. Next, the alien doctor used a drill-shaped instrument on Ted's head and neck with which his memory began to fade. He watched intently in an out-of-body state as the woman moved it down the nape of his neck. He could do nothing to stop her, but he felt no pain. With the light beam, she quickly severed the head from his body and placed it in a basket-sized container on the floor. The table tilted slightly, allowing blood from the headless body to flow into the vat. A side note. The following paragraphs may explain the numerous reports of eviscerated bovine carcasses found in the Southwest over the past several decades. Continuing on. Ted's mind went completely blank. Hours, even days may have passed. The next thing he remembers is he was looking down a row after row of short tubs. He heard A surging sound similar to a large pump which pulsated in the tubs. The containers were filled with a dark red liquid in which chunks of fleshy tissues floated. These chunks looked like bovine genitalia, things he had seen on the farm before. One of these tubs opened, releasing a placenta-like bubble. The alien beings picked up this substance and rinsed it in a nearby sink. Once washed, Ted could see that it was a real human fetus. Each of the tub-like compartments contained embryos in different stages of development. One of the aliens, a gray, went to a short cabinet in a locker area and opened the door and placed a baby inside. Another gray activated a control on the locker and a few moments later opened a door again. It rolled out what looked like a small wind tunnel contraption. Within it was a tray, and on that tray, Ted saw a body identical to his, completely naked. His clone. The aliens moved the clone body over to the tilted table, now empty, and placed it on a metal surface. Then the red-haired woman brought back a mysterious black box and set it on the cloned body's chest. Ted saw himself reconstructed as his consciousness remained in suspended animation. He saw the body begin to suddenly jerk in short spasms, and the chest began to rise and fall, now breathing. Ted's alien handlers next drilled a hollow needle into his left heel, chest, and the back and top of the clone's head. Later, experts interpret this procedure to be a form of implant insertion. They also put drops into his eyes, which later caused them to burn. One of the Greys brought the red-haired woman a headphone device again. Once activated, Ted became vaguely conscious of his memories and feelings. Basically, he came back to life. But was it his, or was he now inhabiting the body of his clone? Were the aliens trying to improve him, perhaps ridding him of disease, or were they planning to use him in an orchestrated scenario? We will probably never know. The headphones continued to generate soothing sounds, and Ted became acutely aware of himself within his new body. Now Ted remembered everything he thought and felt as a child, as if the information had been downloaded into the new cloned body he now inhabited. After this procedure, Ted was escorted to another room where a pale and very thin human awaited him. Another figure entered the room, a tall Nordic with kind eyes. He told Ted about what had been happening, the lockers and procedures done. The Nordic explained to him that he would be able to instantly absorb this information. He explained that there were periodic changes in the evolutionary process of the original Ted, and that from time to time such a switching out procedure would be necessary. He would be contacted when those intervals were reached. The Nordic mentioned that something had been done to Ted's mother and that the genealogical structure of both his parents had been used along with something else. A side note. What happened next must be outlined before the reader can fully understand Ted's journey. And remember, this entire episode began in the 1950s, long before George Lucas created the barroom scene in the original Star Wars, a scene which had become a near cliche in the various Star Trek television shows. Continuing on. After the short briefing, the Nordic took Ted to a stage-like area where there were creatures of various shapes seated in an auditorium. Ted described hairy Bigfoot creatures, half ant, half cockroach-like beings, small greys, Nordics, insectoids, and reptilian types in the audience, as if they were working together, all in arrangement under one umbrella. The pale man had now donned a purple surplice and a satin cowl. Priest's robes, thought Ted. This robed man led two other small children, a boy and a girl, onto the stage. The alien with the makeup and the wine-colored fright wig took a position next to Ted. The Nordic man picked up Ted in his arms and held him out for the audience to see. He placed Ted down after several seconds and proceeded to hold up the two other children in turn. No conversation took place between the three children. Ted sensed that the audience approved of the experimental children. The Nordic man addressed the audience, speaking of future generations. On a screen behind him, images flashed showing the before and after products of the procedure Ted had just been through. The Nordic man explained that these children were the beginnings of products of future generations on Earth. Ted woke up in the field next to his grandmother's farm several hours later. A tornado hit his grandparents' home and uprooted some trees, but luckily Ted was not injured. His uncle, who was home at the time, watched the tornado and saw that there were many different colored lights and glowing places within the vortex. Ted believes that the UFO was hidden inside a cyclone or created it as a diversion. Whew, it's a big story so far, right, you guys? Ted's second abduction. For the next several months, Ted complained of cramps and pain in his abdomen. He contracted several of his childhood diseases again, and even though he should have been immune to them, he came down with different types of flu and did poorly in school. After his abduction, which he felt he could not share with anyone, he began a cocooning process. A year after the tornado, Ted could not recall the abduction, but suffered from post-traumatic stress symptoms, headaches, anxiety attacks, panic attacks, all symptoms of suppressed traumatic material. At 10 years old, Ted began another terrifying alien abduction with his grandmother while she was visiting him at his home, which was located several countries away. Counties, away. Ted's parents were completely unaware of the events and continued the daily chores. This experience occurred on top of the already repressed materials and caused Ted to have many more problems later in life, interpersonal and sexual difficulties that, in retrospect, may have been deliberately conditioned by the aliens. Here again, we see a classic etiology of the emotional love bite as directly linked to aggressive skin and bodily penetration in the form of needle injections, scopes, probes, and other surgical techniques. 2 days after his nightmarish second abduction, with the aid of hypnosis, Ted recalled the events which preceded his grandmother's sudden death. He remembered seeing his grandmother standing at the footstool while several creatures removed her nightgown, replacing it with a white gown, making her look beautiful. Grandy, Ted's affectionate name for his grandmother, appeared hypnotized as the creatures used something like a drill touching the back of her head. This was most likely the insertion of an implant, an instrument similar to the instrument he had seen used years earlier when he floated above his body. They had done something to her, telling her she is coming to live and work for them. Ted sensed the falseness of their behavior. Grandy complained about the pain and seemed to be arguing with the creatures about their human rights, about her human rights. A reptilian creature tells Grandy that they can exchange information on herbs and healing, and that Grandy can try some of their stuff. She took a yellowish clear substance which the aliens put under her tongue. The reptilian tried to coerce Grandy into curing sick people with herbs and special healing powers, but she refused to participate because it wasn't for the right reasons. The aliens told her that someone will come and teach her more someday soon. The aliens then brought in a male figure telling Grandy that it is her dead husband, so she should join with him. But she knew it wasn't. It wasn't Ted's grandfather because he had been dead for at least a decade. She continued to be argumentative and churlish with the aliens. Ted saw that the figure was really a reptilian masquerading as an alien man. When Grandy called out to Jesus, the reptilian grew obsessively angry. He told her that something was put in her head, and if she did not cooperate, it would kill her, and that they were the only ones that could stop it. The reptilian told her that she was going to die because she would not cooperate. Grandy continued praying and cursing the aliens. In the name of Jesus Christ, I demand you to stop. Jesus will not allow you to touch this child or take him. The reptilian then told Grandy she would die and that they were going to take Ted and keep him regardless, and that if she regardless of what she said. Grandy told the aliens for what they had done, they would burn in hell forever. But the alien mocked her, saying, "There is no hell." Grandy continued to tell the reptilian, "You're not going to have our souls." Then she rebuked him in the name of Jesus a third time, and the alien stormed out of the room. At that point, one of the Greys brought Ted to the center of the room where Grandy stood. Yet another reptilian appeared to have sex with Grandy, but she resisted with all her might and mental power. Next, they exchanged the reptilian with the image of her dead husband, and this time Grandy no longer resisted and submitted to the sexual intercourse with the image. Clearly, the drugs had taken effect. Then, two other beings raped her, but this time she was unconscious. One of the aliens sodomized Ted, and then the aliens forced Ted to have sex with his grandmother also. Ted recalled crying out to his grandmother as he lied immobilized. His hands and feet were clamped down by strong elastic bindings. The reptilian who had stormed out earlier was now back and talking about Ted's being, and the other group had abducted him. Ted was not aware of the other group unless it was a reference to another group of aliens, perhaps the ones from the previous abduction who were where the cloning took place. Ted believes that the reptilian wanted their souls and that in spite of her humiliation, Grandy protected him. It was after this incident that the reptilian told Grandy she would die for her disobedience because Ted belonged to them. When she came back to awareness, Grandy was enraged for allowing herself to be tricked. The aliens persisted in their attempt to plant a false post-hypnotic control, specifically trying to trick her into thinking she would be given her that they would give her power to heal with herbs, and she would only if only she would cooperate with them. The morning after this frightening and humiliating encounter, Ted asked his grandmother, "Who was that man talking in the room last night?" Grandy sat at the kitchen chair, slumped over in exhaustion, hugging him. She softly said, "It's the devil, honey, just the devil. Forget about it." Grandy was nervous, upset, and demanded to be taken home that day. It was an unusual request because Grandy lived 3 hours away, but the following day the family drove together to Grandy's farm. While still unpacking, she suddenly suffered a stroke and died without a sound. Her sudden death added greatly to Ted's misery. I want to take a pause right there in the middle of Ted's story because this is highly triggering contact information. This is very detailed and graphic, and I want to put a lot of support around those of you that may be hearing this, that it might be awakening maybe some things. There's a few key things within here to recognize. They 100% utilize false holographic inserts to try and make us think that we are connecting with loved ones or beings that look like beings that we want to connect with. They will make promises. I cannot have more love for this grandmother of Ted. Just can you imagine? So this is happening in the 50s, maybe the early 60s. And this woman had such tenacity. She didn't know anything about any of this, but she had the mental capacity to do everything to curse these beings, to command them away in the name of Jesus, to rebuke them. I do find this interesting because we actually just did a video together recently um, about these kind of attachments and utilizing the name of Jesus. And this is something that I've been very curious about. Why is this name so powerful? Why does it seem to really enrage them or have a sense of keeping some of these things from happening? But in the end, there was a, she gave in to one of the images. And please know this has happened to so many. So many of us have been taken by these holographic inserts. And please know it is not the end. There is always a way to clear these energies out later. They are very tricky, they're very deceitful, and many times they are, if they have these ways of either creating these things that look like a natural death, but they are not. And it's just a heart felt energy out to Grandy. um as you're out in spirit form, we just want to recognize, man, what a strong and powerful woman that was. She did everything to protect her grandchild. And there, I do want to put this in because, Ted's story brings up some stuff that is like literally almost unspeakable. And in that, they don't have any regard to our relationships with our family, to incest or any of these things. And even in that realm, they were making him or forcing him to do things with his own grandmother. This is not uncommon. And it's what makes a lot of people hide things away a lot of times, is because it's like these very taboo or inappropriate things that they will have individuals do, that get locked, and then it leaves PTSD like feelings, experiences in our nervous system. So please, again, as you may be hearing this, just to know, this is not an end all. They may be able to do some of these things or have done these things, but we are getting the knowledge, the wisdom, this information from this book that Eve has presented to us is very powerful, so that we can get our power back and we can start to command all these energies. So I just wanted to take a pause on that. And now, as we just kind of move with the energy, as we continue to hear Ted's story, Ted's third abduction, a love bite bonding. When Ted reached puberty, he experienced another traumatic alien abduction involving a girl he knew at school. He was 14 and remembered only that he and the girl were taken away by what he thought to be angels. He recalls a soft bluish light pervading his room as two small humanoid beings appeared through the wall facing him. Immobilized, Ted found himself floating between two beings dressed in flowing robes as they escorted him through the wall. The trio flew to a deserted schoolyard about a half a block away, and in the distance, Ted saw two more angels approaching him with a girl between them. He recognized the girl from school. Her name was Jill. A big UFO sat on the schoolyard lawn, enveloped in the same blue, foggy light. Ted and Jill were escorted onto the ship, where they soon saw a lineup of several children of roughly the same age. Boys and girls seemed to be represented equally. Ted was in a daze, but remembers seeing familiar compartments, chests and drawers or lockers with bodies in them in the back of the ship, like in his previous abduction. At the time, Ted thought the aliens were angels. This came out of many years. This came out many years later during a hypnotic regression session. Perhaps his angelic vision helped him to deaden the pain of the horror he had witnessed. At one point in the encounter, Ted recalled being paired up face to face with Jill. She was just as dazed and bewildered as he. As the angels positioned them, one alien stepped between, holding an instrument shaped like a candy cane. Ted remembers the alien using this instrument to manipulate Jill's auric energy field. Ted could see his and Jill's body energy as the alien focused the cane on Jill's heart and chest area. Some of the energy seemed to be clinging to the tool as if it was brought toward Ted. Next, the alien took the same tool, still irradiated by Jill's auric energy, and placed it within Ted's heart energy field. The alien specialist repeated this process several times. It was as if the essence of Jill's heart energy was being extracted and mixed carefully with Ted's. For some reason, the alien did not reverse the process. He did not place any of Ted's heart essence into Jill. During this process, a voice sounded in Ted's mind: "We have merged your souls." Side note: as we shall see later on, this one-way love bite procedure, which appeared to be the transference of heart and soul energy, resulted in a one-sided love obsession. Continuing on, There were about a dozen other children and some adults on the ship undergoing the same pairing procedure. It was not until the next day at school that Ted remembered the incident with Jill and the angels. The moment he saw Jill, he felt a rush of emotion as strong as a physical jolt. Just days prior, Ted would not have even given her a second thought, but now he adored her. When the partial memory returned, Ted somehow knew he and Jill had been marked by the aliens to be with one another. Surely, he thought, Jill must remember and feel this too. Ted was wrong. Jill made no notice of him. He pursued her obsessively, yet Jill didn't seem to care about his burning love. Ted was crushed. The love bite was successful as far as the aliens were concerned. Ted turned 14 during this period, and all of the normal adolescent juices were flowing. As his love bitten obsession progressed, he soon lost interest in his schoolwork and outside activities. He tried his best to draw Jill to him and win her over, but to no avail. Ted ached grievously for Jill, but all she gave him in return was a casual friendship. He agonized as he reached her flirting with other boys. As he watched her flirting with other boys, seeing her go out on dates with upperclassmen, ate him up inside. One day, in desperation, Ted tried to get Jill to talk about that night in the schoolyard. Don't you remember? Ted asked. How the angels put our souls together? How could you forget? Jill became irritated and said, Stop it. Don't talk about such crazy things. That's too weird. Ted pleaded for her to try to remember and understand, but Jill became angry and eventually fearful. After that, Ted never mentioned the angel incident again. The aftermath. Ted managed to date sporadically throughout his high school years, but beneath the mask, Ted was lonely and brokenhearted. Jill was the only girl he had ever really loved. After he turned 18 and entered college, his sadness was granted a reprieve. He managed to turn on the charm enough to obtain a summer job at a posh resort near Sun Valley in Idaho. He enjoyed the resort atmosphere so much he decided to take a break from college and continue to work there for several winter seasons. But it wasn't long until Jill came back into his life. Unexpectedly, Jill paid Ted a surprise visit at the resort and decided to stay longer than intended. Ted was overjoyed. Her casual friendliness changed to a more serious romantic affection. She latched onto Ted as if they were boyfriend and girlfriend, and soon they were sleeping together. Nothing could have made Ted happier. He was on cloud nine. He finally had the girl of his dreams, and maybe they were meant to be together forever after all. Side note, Ted had temporarily transcended the obsession, but he was now being drawn back into the relationship engineered by the aliens. He never thought to ask what compelled Jill to come see him in Idaho. Is this a coincidence, or did the aliens interfere with Jill again? Continuing with the story. The newly matched couple went out dancing almost every night. Jill had an enthusiasm and energy of a young child. She could outdrink and outdance Ted, and he soon began to tire of the nightclub scene. Ted now saw a superficial side to Jill's personality and began to remember his broodingness and his sadness. He wisely began passing up the nightly outings and began to stay home. He was, after all, in line for a management position. It wasn't long until Ted found Jill sleeping around with his friends. He was humiliated, angry, terribly hurt. She didn't love him, and he knew it. The aliens seemed to have had a field day with this couple, but Ted still couldn't deal with his submerged memories. In his opinion, all Jill cared about was having a good time. He couldn't understand why she drank so heavily or why their relationship ended in a disaster. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he got the idea that they were meant for one another. He knew it in his soul. Why would the angels do this to him? How could God work with angels who made such a messy mistake? Ted was devastated by Jill's betrayal. He kept the distance from her until she moved back to college. Ted absorbed himself in work again and began to heal by taking frequent solitary mountain hikes. During one of these hikes, he met a mysterious, dark-haired woman named Maya. She claimed to live in the nearby mountains and had worked at Sun Valley Lodge. She seemed to know Ted on a soul level and was very wise for her age. She asked Ted many questions that directed him to think about spiritual and metaphysical concepts. Maya played the role of a Sora or Mystica or otherworldly muse that propelled him into a newfound interest in the paranormal realm. Ted and Maya shared a deep spiritual friendship. He loved her, but realized it wasn't the same kind of passion and love he had for Jill. Maya had a compelling way of interacting. The effects of her words had the force of a command. She talked to Ted about going back to college, and soon Ted had a strong desire to go back home. He quit his resort job and packed his things. Before leaving, Ted wanted to say one last goodbye to his friends and, of course, Maya. He searched and searched for Maya, asking his work associates if they had seen her. To his surprise, no one had ever seen Maya and did not acknowledge that a Maya had ever worked at Sun Valley Lodge. According to the personnel office, no employee named Maya or anyone answering to her description had ever worked there. Ted was stunned. Was Maya an angel? An apparition? Several months after returning to Alabama, Ted realized that even though he had been hurt in his relationship with Jill, he had forgiven her. He was still in love with her. They met again and eventually got back together and lived together near her college. Their relationship was predictably tumultuous, but in spite of the acrimony, it lasted 11 years. Jill seemed to have internal unresolved issues with something she did not understand. Ted still in denial and didn't see the relationship between the childhood mating abductions and the troubles he was having with Jill. She developed a deepening drinking problem and cheated on Ted very often. Ted and Jill broke up and got back together many times, but eventually Ted could not take it anymore. In retrospect, he realized that the relationship was set up to be a disaster from the beginning, and he suffered miserably. To this day, he can't understand why the alien set him up in a love relationship that just about destroyed two people. The breakdown. Ted broke down from the stress of his relationship with Jill. To top it off, he began having an increase in psychic activity and prophetic dreams that frightened him. In an attempt to understand his experiences, he joined a spiritualist group who helped him to use, rather than be afraid of, his newfound psychic abilities. Ted discovered that he had many spirit guides who gave him an accurate information on a number of topics. This was so accurate that Ted began to act as a psychic reader for others. After he joined the psychic group, Ted opened up to several visitations from spirit guides, quote unquote. One of these guides, calling himself Volmo, seemed to be a leader, but as Ted discovered many years later, this Volmo was really a reptilian posing as a benevolent spirit. Oddly enough, none of these visiting spirits mentioned alien encounters or UFO sightings. Through his intensified relationship, Ted received accurate and reliable information when it came to his psychic readings for other people, but when it came to insights into his own visions and his disturbing spirit visits, he got nothing. Ted asked his group, "Now, why is Volmo so outer directed? Am I blocking something out?" His spiritualist friends offered him the usual explanations and platitudes. Our spirit guides are highly advanced and are here to steer us away from harm. They are helping you in your spiritual development. If the extraterrestrials can travel that far and have such superior intelligence and technology, they must be here for our benefit. This turned out to be completely false and very naive. Even though Ted felt confident about using his psychic abilities, he soon again became depressed and physically exhausted. His worn down state led him to serious mental breakdown accompanied by obsessive suicidal ideation. It was at this point in his life that Ted started questioning everything, including his nocturnal visitation from his spirit guides. During these intense soul-searching moments, Ted's friends offered channeled advice from their own spirit guides. On one occasion, a spirit guide explicitly told Ted not to worry about that night in the fog, and that being that jolted him with the light wand, an obvious abduction. Others tried to pull him away from such fearful things and told him not to dwell on the negative aspects of his experience. And they told him to just try it, just trust that it's all for your spiritual well being. Ted plunged back into his psychic work despite his inner voice telling him something was askew. He could he still could not face the reality of his abduction, and denial forced him into a state of exhaustion as he wound up on disability. Throughout these years, Ted felt like a vagabond, being directed from one place to another by the so called spirit guides. Throughout his wanderings from Alabama to New Mexico, Texas, and Louisiana, Ted stayed in touch with his psychic elders. All the while, Ted continued to have fragmented memories of his boyhood abductions and flashbacks about Jill and Maya. In one flashback, while Ted was in New Mexico, he recalled seeing a group of abductees being corralled into an underground facility led by gray aliens. This brought back deeply repressed images. Ted blamed himself and harbored guilt about Grandy's death. He also experienced difficulties with female relationships and avoided contact with women. This forced him to seek help from clinical professionals who understand the abduction phenomena, and his life has been significantly improved since then. It was at this time that Ted met Barbara Bartholic, an abductions researcher and hypnotherapist. Ted underwent a series of hypnotic regressions which uncovered layers of repressed alien abduction memories. During these sessions, Ted realized the connection between his spirit guides and the reptilian named Volmo. He also discovered the elaborate deceptions and manipulations that encompassed his entire life, his psychic work, and his abductions. Now, with the blinders off, Ted could see that the aliens masqueraded as benevolent spirit guides offering psychic messages and perks designed to steer people away from the obvious dark side of the abduction phenomena. In his own words, Ted confessed, "In my prayers, I have openly confessed to God that I have been molded, shaped, and engineered to be a light worker, quote unquote, that they wanted me to be. I have been in preparation for 40 years to do just what I've been doing, which is fascinating and mystifying people with my remarkable abilities. Through psychic readings, I have led people away from the Christ consciousness into the world of metaphysics and UFOlogy. I overpowered people mentally and left them wide open to invite this invading nightmare into their lives. And I did it all under the illusion and deception that I was really and truly helping my fellow man grow spiritually wiser through my so-called gifts. Now I've asked God to take this ability they have engineered within me and use it against them to reveal their plans and secrets. May God give us the strength and power to overcome their evil." Over a decade after discovering his abduction memories, Ted has integrated his past traumas and accepts the wisdom his life has taught him. Through years of support and with the aid of hypnosis, Ted has been able to move forward with a new sense of self esteem and personal victory. And we will pause there for our live read for today as we will continue on to chapter 5 and the Linda Cortile case. You guys, thank you guys for joining me along on this journey. I hope so much that last paragraph from Ted's chapter sinks into your heart and you really can receive that and hear that. That is the most perfect paragraph to really describe the false light, false ascended master, false channelings, false teachings, all of that energy, how the Twilight Masters work, how they get in and attempt to get us opened up to wanting to know more, heal more, expand more, but it is done in these false light, false energies. I really invite you, if any of this is already resonating for you, opening up some things for you, to definitely find some support as we continue through this live read book, to find some ways to share your stories, to have a safe place to share these stories so your memories can come back. And also, this is part of the passion why I created the Seals and Implant course. that is on the website that is designed in such a way that it's accessible, it's reusable, it's easy. It's something that is a support tool for us that we can utilize to begin to unbind, unwind, unplug all of these ways in which they have utilized their implants, these seals, these different types of manipulations into our body so that we can continuously free up our body systems. I do find Ted's story brings us something a little different to contemplate because, I could say at the time of this book, the idea of cloning wasn't that big of a thought form that was talked about. Now it is used almost kind of like just a catchphrase or a catchword. I still don't think even though the idea of cloned beings and cloning is much more openly talked about now, I still feel it's almost kind of talked about, not, but yet not still fully understood. And this is, I think, something very important for us to pay attention to because we are really here to utilize the Christ consciousness. I love that he brought up the Christ consciousness because that is everything that we are doing with our ascension mechanics, with our building our flame body. It's all about building the Christ star, the Christ consciousness, reinstating our Christed consciousness back within ourselves, and literally utilizing that energy to basically eradicate, clear out, and to get these zeta reticuli, these reptilian beings, these different negative alien agendas, and even the SRA types of things that have happened out of our blood, out of our body, out of our template, so that we can have our sovereignty and freedom again. So, with that, please check the online calendar. That is where I do list where our next live reads are. So you can already see when the next live read is posted. With so much love, you guys. Thank you guys for sharing this with me today.